Hello again from New York. I'm Aaron Brown on a beautiful September afternoon in the city and a horrible task at hand. The search and rescue teams continue to do their difficult, tedious, meticulous work down at the crash scene, and then the heavy construction work, dismantling buildings that are a danger to them and to the area. Preparations going on for the stock exchange to open on Monday morning at 9:30. Tests are being run there, and so far all the tests are going well. At the armory where the families of the missing have gathered, DNA samples are now being taken to help identify the remains as they are found at the site. That's the scene in New York today. Just to put a button on a piece of information we told you about earlier, if I may, this morning at Boston's Logan Airport. Logan will always have an infamous place in this tragedy. A man was pulled off a Delta Airlines flight headed for Atlanta because officials said he was behaving in a rowdy and suspicious way. The man, described as vaguely Arab-looking, kept changing seats in first class. Police have now investigated that situation and have determined the reason the man kept changing seats in first class is he wanted a better seat. He's been released. It gives you an idea of how edgy things are after this extraordinary tragedy. To Washington, Judy, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Aaron. You're right. A lot of us are jumpy right now, and for many different reasons. Some of them good ones and some of them not so good. Well, President Bush used words today that some of us thought we might not hear in a long time, and that is, he said the United States is at war. Before he met with his national security team this morning at Camp David, the president told reporters Osama bin Laden is, quote, the prime suspect behind Tuesday's attacks, and he advised the men and women in the U.S. military to, quote, get ready.
They will try to hide. They will try to avoid the United States and our allies, but we're not going to let them. They run to the hills. They find holes to get in, and we will do whatever it takes to smoke them out and get them running, and we'll get them.
Meantime, in New York today, 3 fire department officials were laid to rest in the first of what are sure to be many similar scenes across the region. An estimated 300 firefighters are among the almost 5,000 people still missing in the rubble of the World Trade Center. Here in Washington at the Pentagon, officials said today they have recovered more bodies from that building's damaged area. But workers in other parts of the Pentagon are moving forward with their duties. When asked if U.S. ground troops might be part of a military response, a White House spokesman said today, quote, nothing has been ruled out. On a related note from overseas, the Pakistani government today pledged to, quote, fully cooperate with the United States in its war effort against terrorism. More on those developments ahead. We'll also take a look at the life of one of the suspected hijackers and how authorities believe that he spent the last year preparing for Tuesday's attack. And we'll take a look ahead at the reopening of the markets on Monday and what lies ahead for the American economy. Aaron?
Judy, thanks. Here in this city, as we prepare for Wall Street's reopening on Monday morning, there is just a block and a half away the relief effort that goes on. Martin Savage has been down there for 3 days now. He is down there still. Marty, good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you, Aaron. This has been another all-out effort day on the part of rescuers and those trying to get in to see if there are any survivors to be found in the rubble. You can see that rubble in the background there. Yeah, as many times as I have looked at that, you still find your eyes being drawn back once more. Really what you're looking at there for the most part is the remains of building number 7. That is not one of the high-rises, it's one of the lower levels that was part of the complex. And then, of course, you can see it's still smoldering, still burning, and some firefighters say it will be smoldering and burning like that for a long, long time to come. We were talking with people who have been working as rescuers inside there. A lot of them are construction people, And what we have noted is that there has been a shift in the approach here to the rescue effort, turning it over more to the professionals, that is, those who are used to working with heavy equipment, those that have the expertise with steel, specifically cutting that steel, getting access for the rescue teams to get deeper inside of the debris pile. And one of the things that one of the gentlemen told us about was the fact that there is word that there are voids there, that they have heard that there are indications from people who have managed to climb down that there are certain areas that almost appear untouched. And almost every individual that you talk to that is part of the rescue team, part of the volunteer effort, say they believe quite strongly that hope is still very strong. They say that there are a lot of opportunities that we have seen historically in the past from other disasters of collapses or earthquakes that people can survive. There were stores there, so there may possibly be access for food and water, and they are not ready to turn out the lamp of hope in their efforts. Then we've also been watching the thousands of people that have been attempting to get back into their homes. There are many apartments that are in this area that is an exclusionary zone right now. There were estimates of about 25,000 people, some believe it's a lot higher, that have been made homeless because they cannot get back to their apartments. People today lining up, standing in long lines, long waits for the opportunity to go back to their apartments. They are escorted, every one of them, and given just 10 minutes to grab whatever it is in their life they left behind that they must take away and may not be able to get back to for quite some time. And also in this area has been the effort to work on getting Wall Street back online. That is a separate issue, but it's also a vital one for the economy and getting things back to normal, which is something that is stressed so much on the part of the president and the leaders of New York City. That ongoing effort is also happening, but the most important one is the one taking place back there, and you can see perhaps in the distance the streams of water still being still being poured on the flames, still being poured on the smoke, some 5 days after New York City and all of us changed quite a bit. Aaron.
Martin, thanks. Martin Savage down on the scene. One of the reasons that people aren't giving up hope is that while all the focus with the Trade Center towers has been up, it actually, there's 6 or 7 levels below ground that people could be in, and that's where the most hope is. That's where the shops were. There's some food there, water there, so it's possible, and that's why people aren't giving up. People certainly aren't giving up hope at the Armory. These are the families of the missing, though there's, in fact, rather distressing scenes there being played out today. As this all moves to the next step, I guess. Elizabeth Cohen has been watching that, joins us again from the Armory. Elizabeth?
Aaron, I'm here at Ground Zero for the emotional devastation here in New York City. And behind me, as you can hear and possibly see now, is a gospel choir that's been coming to give people strength. Somebody to lean on, just might have a problem, and you understand. We all need somebody to lean on me. When you're not strong, I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. Call me right there. Call me, 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 I believe I can touch the sky. In this group of people singing are just ordinary citizens who've been so horrified by what's happened. Also, I see some Salvation Army workers who are just in tears. They must have been through an incredible amount in the past couple of days. They've been bringing food and water, counseling people. I also see some people in the back who have the posters that people have been giving out and hanging up all over the city. Again, in this group are people who have lost loved ones. There are just ordinary citizens who came down to share their sadness. This has become just a natural gathering place, this corner of East 26 in Lexington. I also see several aid workers and counselors. You can imagine the stress that they have been through. They're now asking for requests from the crowd. I heard God Bless America. I heard Amazing Grace. But again, back to these counselors. I see several of them in the crowd. You can imagine in the Armory, they've had more than 3,000 people come in there. And you can imagine counseling person after person after person. Let's listen to Amazing Grace. This is just one of the many spontaneous shows of support for people who have been through so much in these horrible events. There are so many others. I'll tell you about one. Down the street, there is a bank of cabs that are lining up to take families to hospitals, to wherever they need to go to look for their loved ones. And it is very touching the way that New Yorkers have really come together. I'll give you another example. My producer, Miriam Falco, took a cab here from the hotel this morning, and when he heard why she was here, that she was a journalist covering this, he didn't charge her, wouldn't take any money. There are volunteers that have been handing out food. The volunteers that have been handing out food, everything that they've been doing has been so incredible. Aaron?
Elizabeth, I'll tell you something. This is a great town. New York, I think people around the country, many have a kind of jaundiced view of New York, and perhaps New Yorkers have a kind of jaundiced view of the rest of the country. But to watch how New Yorkers have responded, this is a tough tough town, and it does not like to be bullied. And so New Yorkers have responded with unusual, I won't say uncharacteristic, but a stunning generosity and compassion to their fellows. I heard a story coming in today. A guy came up to me as I was coming in the building and said, saw the most incredible thing. There was a guy over there in a wheelchair. He's a double amputee, and he's kind of zipping around in his wheelchair delivering sandwiches to the volunteers and the people who are working. It's I think our view, the country's view of New York, may change in all of this. Bill Hemmer knows a fair amount about the volunteers who have been flooding in and the efforts they are making, and on the other side of that, what still needs to be done. Bill joins us now from the Javits Center, the major convention center in town. Bill?
Aaron, hello again from down on street level along 11th Avenue on Manhattan's west side. Two things strike you throughout the day here. One is the continued desperation along with the hope, and the other is the generosity. Let me show you the desperation. On so many street corners, we have seen signs for the missing, people posting them in numerous locations throughout Manhattan, trying to hold on to the possibility ultimately that their loved ones, their fathers, their mothers, their sisters, their brothers may be found alive in the World Trade Center. The other thing is the generosity. We talked about the enormous outpouring. The small things strike us too, Aaron. On this street corner here where the volunteers lined up, there are people here in Manhattan offering their apartment in case they need a place to sleep and a place to rest for the night here. We talked about the volunteers throughout the day today. We have one volunteer with us now. Keith is in from Boston. And Keith, you want to step up here a second? Thank you, Bill. Can. You were at the site yesterday. You just got back again today. Give us an idea for what's happening down there and the level of progress.
All progress, slow going, I mean steady, but everybody's got the same motive there, and that's to find survivors. So, I mean, everybody's morale is good. They're going for what they can, you know?
It is Saturday. The last survivor pulled out was Wednesday, 4 days ago.
Which is true.
When you're down there working, knowing that fact, what kind of feeling is generated there?
Can't really explain it. I mean, all that, you just got to keep in your mind that what it would be like to be in that building, knowing there's people looking. That's what kept me going. I mean, if somebody's in there, there's got to be somebody alive, so you just got to keep going. I mean,
will you come back tomorrow?
Yeah, I'll be staying here. I mean,
as many times as they'll send you, and you'll go.
Many times as I can go out there.
Many people throughout the day, Keith, have been coming up to us and making sure that we get the word out about what things are needed and what things are not needed. The one thing many people say that is needed is what you're wearing right here, this respirator.
Respirators. Yes.
Tell us about why that is so useful down there in the site.
Well, what they have down there for the majority is paper dust masks, which are for sanding or sanding drywall.
We don't want those then.
No. These clear out 99.97% of the microns that would be in asbestos or whatever, and there's a lot of asbestos down at the Trade Center. It was built with asbestos, so I mean that's a major issue.
Keith, I am told though that these canisters here are replaceable, and that's what you need because they wear out over time, correct?
Yeah, I mean you'll get a day out of this, out of one canister.
So the canisters, the respirators, what else could you use down there?
Flashlights, batteries, respirators.
I'm told things like hats with lights, hard hats with lights, welding equipment, work boots, goggles.
From what I've seen, they had a lot of work boots. The welding equipment's taken care of. I mean, hats with lights, that's a little more than you'd really.
Okay.
I mean,
well,
most
you would
people,
know.
You could get a hat and a flashlight. I mean,
Keith, thanks, and best of luck throughout the week. And quickly, we want to pass along throughout the day, Aaron. We've been talking about where people can send donations if indeed they want to give. We've been talking about Shea Stadium and Giant Stadium. We're now told at this time that they don't want any more donations at that point. What we just talked about, though, is what is needed. You can bring that here to the Javits Center. Also, they're saying they're starting to turn the corner now away from donations to the financial end of it. And they say if you want to give and want to give money, they're giving out 3 specific locations right now: the American Red Cross through the Disaster Relief Fund, the Salvation Army, and the United Way of New York City. You can address it specifically to the September 11th Fund. So those 3 things right now are starting to be pushed here on the streets of Manhattan. Aaron, back upstairs to you now.
Bill, thank you very much. Bill Hemmer at the Javits Center, not terribly far away from where we are. Judy Woodruff in Washington. Judy.
Aaron, as you know, Eileen O'Connor has been following the threads of the investigation after Tuesday's attacks, and Eileen joins us now with a major development. Eileen.
Well, it is very a disturbing development, really, Judy. U.S. officials are confirming that U.S. intelligence had at least two people, on a watch list. They informed the FBI about Khalid al-Midhar and Salim al-Hamzi. Now, al-Hamzi lived with his brother Nawak al-Hamzi at a San Diego apartment. Al-Midhar was a frequent visitor at that apartment. Neighbors described them as quiet. They often swam in the pool. They would come and go, though, at times that were a little suspicious, but people didn't really think anything of them. Apparently, they were, though, on a watch list. And U.S. intelligence say that they did inform the FBI because al-Khalid had actually been captured on videotape in Malaysia, according to one source, meeting with a suspect in the bombing of the USS Cole. So all of these men associated with the bombing of the USS Cole. That, of course, has ties to Osama bin Laden. So these men, despite the fact that they were on this watch list, were living in San Diego, traveled, as my sources indicate, on to Phoenix. And one of them, then they met up with a man named Hani Hanjour, and he, we know, received flight training in Scottsdale, Arizona. We also know that these men purchased tickets on the Dulles flight. That is the flight that actually went into the Pentagon. So those people, two hijackers at least, that we know of, who actually went on the Pentagon flight, that Dulles flight that went into the Pentagon, were being watched before by U.S. intelligence, had told the FBI that these were people to watch because they were already associated with that bombing of the USS Cole. Judy?
Eileen, to be on a watch list means the FBI is suspicious, but they don't have enough evidence to do anything about it?
Well, they are suspicious, and they are to be monitoring their developments. But some reports say that some $50,000 worth of credit card receipts for airlines tickets were found in one of these residences or a hotel room that was used by them. So there was some suspicious things going on, and they met up with a man and actually lived with a man, Hani Hanjour, who was receiving flight training in the United States. So this is a bit suspicious if they were on a watch list and were being able to travel so freely. Judy?
Eileen, the question keeps arising. If so much information is now surfacing in the 2, 3, 4 days after Tuesday's attacks about these people, why wasn't it clearer before that these people could pose a terrible danger?
Well, a lot of people would say hindsight is 20/20. There's a lot of disparate pieces of information, and this is a very large country, and there are a lot of people. You know, the other thing, Judy, in tracking the threads of this investigation, what has been so frustrating for us and what law enforcement officials say has been so frustrating for them is that these men all use very similar names, very similar spellings. And they're also using cutouts, and that means that they're using people who actually died, the names of people who died. And so that makes things increasingly difficult. For instance, we know in this case that there were two men on that watch list, Khalid al-Midhar and Salim al-Namzi. Now, al-Hamzi had a brother, Nawak al-Hamzi. All of this very confusing, and it was Nawak al-Hamzi who actually rented the apartment. So it's only his name that shows up on the lease. And you see, that's how they get around it.
All right, Eileen O'Connor, following the investigation, we can only imagine how much pressure there is right now on all these investigators at the FBI and elsewhere. Darren?
Judy, we heard Eileen there talk about the common links between many of the suspects in this case. You hear FBI investigators, also journalists trying to put together the picture of where these suspects spent their time and where they were and exactly what they're doing. With one of the suspects on board one of the doomed flights, that trail leads to Beirut, Lebanon, and that's where we find our Brent Sadler today. Brent, what kind of picture are you able to paint from Beirut?
Well, first of all, Darren, revelations that a 26-year-old Lebanese man is suspected by the United States Justice Department of piloting a jetliner which may have been sent to target the White House has shocked and disturbed his family here in Lebanon's eastern Bekaa Valley. Now, the man at the center of this is Ziad Jarraf, and he is alleged to be one of the hijackers on United Flight 93, which crashed in a field some 80 miles from Pittsburgh shortly after 3 other jets struck the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. Ziad Jarrah's family here in Lebanon say that his profile, as far as they know, does not fit that of an Islamic fundamentalist bent on terror. In fact, his family here say that Ziad Jarrah enjoyed going to nightclubs, drank alcohol, and shared his life, but was not married to a Turkish woman.
He never acted or talked in a way that you could have an understanding that he might be related to this. He has his girlfriend, he goes to nightclubs, he drinks sometimes. His way of life can't be related to these parts.
Now, Ziad Jarrah's life away from Beirut began in Germany 4 years ago when he began engineering studies by proud parents who actually paid for that training, those courses out there. Jarrah also went to the Hamburg Mechanical Technical Institute, where 2 other suspected hijackers were also studying, it's thought, at the same time. Around a year ago, Jarrah told his parents that he was in the United States taking part in a seminar organized by the Boeing Aircraft Corporation that was related, he said, to his studies. After that, Jarrah returned to Hamburg, receiving yet more help from his parents. Later, he told them that he was going to Florida, was in Florida, training to be a pilot. They assumed all was well. Jarrah's last call home here in Lebanon came just 2 days before the suicide attacks, when he thanked his ailing father for sending him yet more money. The only time that Jarrah's movements raised concern here in Lebanon was when his Turkish girlfriend told his family that she thought he may have gone to Afghanistan with friends when they had separated for several weeks. Now, that is not being confirmed by the family. They say they have no evidence that he went to Afghanistan, and the family here in Lebanon is saying that they are more than willing to cooperate with the international inquiry. Back to you, Darren.
Brent, one question for you here. If, in fact, the family doesn't believe or is in shock and denial over what their son is accused of doing, what, in fact, did they think he was doing? Just that he was a student at all these places they were paying for him to attend?
Well, you have to look at the background of the family here. They're very well-to-do, well-educated, obviously have finances. They're a well-known family in the Bekaa Valley area, Sunni family, and they were convinced, they tell me, that their relative, that Ziad Jarrah, was doing very well in life. They had nothing, they say, to confirm any suspicions that are being raised now. In fact, he was back here in February to attend surgical work for his father, who had some heart surgery. He was here in February, and his girlfriend, the Turkish woman I mentioned, was back here only in August, just a few weeks ago, attending a family wedding, which Jarrah said he was unable to attend, saying that he was too busy taking examinations. Darren.
Brent Sadler in Beirut. Brent, thank you very much. Now, that's just a picture of one of the many suspected hijackers on board those planes on Tuesday. Our Miles O'Brien is joining us now. He's been not only putting together the picture of some of the others, but even more interestingly, seeing how their paths cross and how their circles kind of connect.
Concentric circles, you might call them. 19 suspects in all were on board those 4 aircraft. Let's first of all talk about the person we were just talking about, Ziad Jarrah, and that reference to Hamburg that Brent Sadler mentioned. Let's go to Hamburg, where the technical institute there, the Harburg Technical Institute, was a place where Jarrah was, along with Mohammed Atta, who was on American Airlines Flight 11. That was the first aircraft to strike the World Trade Center. And Marwan al-Shihi, who was on United 175, the second one. So Hamburg's an important place. Now, we're not sure about any sort of Brussels connection, but Brussels is a place of interest today as this investigation continues. Police there arrested 4 people who are linked to an Islamic fundamentalist group. 2 of them remain in custody. They had weapons to be used in war. That is the charge there in Brussels, Belgium, specifically Uzis. And there was some indication that they were looking for American targets in Europe. This all raises the question that what we're seeing is perhaps just the beginning. Perhaps some of the plan was thwarted. Now let's get back to the United States and see what we've got going on in the investigation here. First of all, Texas. Texas. Important point in Texas, there were two men who were arrested, or I should say detained, by the Immigration and Naturalization Service, Mohammed Jawed Azmat and Ayub Ali Khan. They have been transported to New York for questioning. What is perhaps most ominous about them is they were carrying these box cutters, which many of the passengers who called on the cellular telephones before the crashes indicated